Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and welcome to another episode of Chasing Legends. Welcome back to Chasing Legends. I'm Wayne Tuttle, and explanation here as we get ready to start on this 27th episode of doing this going into the summer is we fully planned by July to have the next 10, 12 episodes of the next season we were doing on YouTube. And once we got started and we got a lot of stuff going, we got about 4 or 5 episodes completely filmed in the can. And then, of course, COVID happened. And it suddenly broke everything down. So there is a bit of a delay. And the problem is, and what we're doing is, since we're doing things very real time and it's actually what's happening, it's equally as bad for us because we're itching to do something and we're not doing it. So we pretty much ended up, I think we suspended everything in February. And then, of course, March, April, and things have progressively gotten worse. We kept waiting for an open window when we thought things were going to be good and we could get out. And then, of course, the summer heat came in. Today, I believe it's about 112. So it's just we're kind of caught in that mix. We're hoping for a day or two we can push some episodes, but we're not trying to do filler. We're trying to really do what we're doing. So everything got put in kind of a delay. There was a discussion, could we put half the episodes up together and get 6 episodes out and then put a delay in and get them next. And we've kind of decided just to sit back, hold back. We're doing the Chasing Legends thing on Monday, and then the Legend of the Superstition Mountains YouTube stuff will, as soon as we get back into operation, we'll finish up those last episodes. But like I said, we were halfway there and then COVID happened. So our apologies for that, kind of beyond our control. This week, again, with the COVID thing, and waiting for things to lighten up so I can get up and maybe catch Woody and catch Frank and then try to catch some new content from them instead of seeing me each and every week like you have been. We're still back into Wayne's story time, and I'm trying to alternate stories that I'm going to tell with some historical background stuff and, different manuscripts and mix things up a bit. So this week, we're going to talk about a place I definitely became aware of. I was probably 11 or 12. I think I came up into this area. I saw the specific adit from the other side of the ridge. Someone pointed it out. I was pretty young at the time, so I'm thinking I was 11 or 12, not quite 9, 10. I'd been back in the mountains for a few years at that point. And I saw it across. I could see a little bit of a dump. And the adit, well, I know what the size of it now is, about 5.5 feet, probably about 3 foot wide. And there was a little bit of a flat shelf, small area in front of it where the dump head, they kind of worked the dump off and all. And I was kind of curious about it, noted the area, and then a few years later, I would think probably about 3 years later, I came back again with some friends. We kind of got across, we had to work our way across the ravine, kind of rediscovered it again. I don't think we went very far. We got back in after about 20, 30 feet. It had enough curve that it went black. We didn't have any flashlights. We realized it was more extensive than it was, and then nothing happened again. So the next trip I made, and it's one of 2 people. I usually don't use names because I never really have contact with these guys, and I don't know how they feel about you sharing their stories. So I'll start using first names at times with this. So it was either Daryl or Wade, and I'm thinking it was Daryl. But we went out, and I've been talking about this spot. We were sitting around one day, and I have to be probably around 20, 21 years old. And we were drinking beer, and I was talking, and he's saying, why don't we tomorrow just head out there, and let's kind of like check it out, I said, yeah, I was up for it. So we grabbed some gear and stuff. I never thought of him as much the outdoorsy type, but he seemed very enthusiastic about it. We loaded up, went out, parked, went hoofing it back up in there. Figured we could get in there, and if we got a really early start at sunrise, before sunrise, we could get in there, have enough time to spend several hours there and get ourselves out before dark. And we got in, we started making the trip in. I don't think there was anything magical, anything bad happened going in. When you're young like that, definitely, back in those days, water. Nowadays, everybody carries plenty of water. Back then, you carried beer. And I think we drank some beers on the way in. And there was probably a few other things going through our systems. And we got back in there and found the spot. We had some lights. We went back in and we found there was a tunnel, and it kind of dipped. The floor kind of undulated a little. Some low spots. When we were looking around, we couldn't quite figure if did they find something in the floor, what was the reason behind that. Went back a certain distance. There was a side tunnel, and I remember we started to follow that, and there was a couple low spots. And it kind of started to peter out, started to get smaller. It opened up, and it never really opened up into anything. We could never really see any kind of vein they were following. And on the way back out, I remember looking and standing one of those impressions, and I was looking around, and then a lot of times you're just holding the light out and you're looking up and around, and then I suddenly just pointed the light up, and there was an opening that went straight up. So I told him, I said, hey, let's go check this out. We didn't have any rope. So the idea was, the ceiling was about, like I said, 5.5 feet. I would get up and kind of get up onto his shoulders, and then he was going to have to boost me up, and then I was going to get my back against the wall and my feet across from me. I'm going to say it was enough where I could kind of wedge myself in and then kind of inch myself up. We couldn't see the top. It looked like it wasn't going to be, from what we could see, and we thought we could see the ceiling, it should be only about 30, 40 feet. And at that time I thought, well, it's no biggie. I wasn't thinking about possibly falling. I wasn't thinking about what would occur when I got to the top. I know this sounds like pure stupidity, but when you're young, that's what you do. So we started to approach this as like, okay, you get me up here. And we had a little bit of rope. It wasn't very good rope. There was nothing to tie into there at all. There's no reason. So we decided to tie it to me. If I could find something up there, I would just tie it off. And it was like, I'm going to say it was nothing probably stronger than a really kind of like, that like hemp kind of, it wasn't really thick stuff. It was very thin stuff. And it was old, and I wasn't sure about how that would work. But it seemed like the smart thing to do, right? Tie the rope to me, tie it through my belt loops. And so I went shimmying up this thing. It probably took a good hour or so to shimmy up. One of the problems was it would get wider, and then it would get a little more narrow. There were a couple places in it where it felt like I was getting close to my knees being too close to my chin, where I almost couldn't move because I was getting tightened in, but it would open up again. And then there was a couple spots where I just couldn't really brace for long, so I had to occasionally stop for a few minutes and relax, just wedge myself in and lock myself, because it was getting wider and smaller, and it was causing me my muscles were hurting. I was sweating. I was just grinding my back against the wall. Again, with whatever we were doing, I was not feeling any pain whatsoever. So I worked my way up, and at the top it opened up. Not like a funnel, but it opened where it was there, and then it just opened up. And it was I kind of put my hand out, and I realized it was very loose stuff. The way I got out of this, and I realized there was kind of an opening, there wasn't much light. I had the flashlight. I think I tied it around my neck or whatever, so I could take my hand occasionally and look around. Realized in this position, I was able to look and kind of see, and I was able to tell that behind me it looked like there was space, and that's all I could hope for, was there was space. So my way of getting out of this predicament, as odd as it sounds, and being young, you can do this, is I figured I'd get myself up to where I was on that lip of that loose stuff where it was opening wide, and then I'd have my legs, and I figured there would be enough spring in my legs that I would start to lean forward and then push and shove and literally try to push myself up the last couple of feet, and then just start scrambling backwards, which sounds, I think, to everyone listening, sounds like the dumbest idea in the world, the best way to fall right back down that hole. But I didn't know. I didn't think I had the muscle and the endurance to go back down that tube like that. And that rope, there was nothing to do. So that was what I did. I kind of pulled in my legs, and I shot myself as quick as I could back, and started scrambling and scrambling and scrambling. And I was slipping back, but I managed to have enough of a purchase. I flipped my body over, and that's what stopped me. Daryl he's down there talking, and I could hear him. Like I said, it was Daryl or Wade, and I'm pretty sure it was Daryl. And I got up on the lip and just kind of pulled myself up, and he's yelling. He was cussing because I'm kicking everything possible, this loose dirt, sand, and stuff down, and he's just getting all this dust and small debris. Got up. I remember looking around, and it's pretty dark, and I get the flashlight up, and there was a big, like, 6x6 board, and it was about so long, and I looked at it, and then I took it over to the hole, and I dropped it in, and it fell down just to where that wedge was open up, and then it just kind of locked in there. So I got that there, and then I, of course, did the next really, well, that was probably, I'd probably already done 3 or 4 stupid things. Then I stood on it and kind of bounced to make sure I could wedge it in so it wouldn't fall any further. That seemed to work. Jumped back out, looked around. There was a couple areas where it looked like they dug and went back, and then the area I was looking at didn't go back very far. It kind of ended. So I'm looking around, and I decided to kind of jump up, and I looked in this hole, and I saw a ladder, like an old, the old wooden ladders. Now we have the aluminum extension ladders. It was kind of a ladder like that, but it was wood. And I managed to grab onto the end of it. I pulled it out after several jumps, was able to pull it out enough, get it down, and realized it was modern, probably, 40s, 50s, 60s. And as I pulled that thing down, got it, looked around, I didn't see any trash debris, any sign anybody had been there. Took that ladder and set it, and it was very close to that hole. But I set that, climbed up, and there was some rope I saw back in the back. Now the rope was very old. It was, old typical rope, not nylon or anything like that, old regular rope. And, but it looked like it was gonna hold. So, and it was probably about an extra 3 or 4 feet than what we needed. So I tied that around, stood on that beam again, like an idiot. Tied that around several loops to use up whatever slack there was, try to make it tight, drop that down so Darryl could come up. And then I did the next positive thing. I decided to climb up that ladder and check that hole out while Darryl's climbing up. So he's climbing up this and trying to use that, wrapping his foot in there, use it as a bracer and trying a different method. And I remember climbing up this ladder, and I saw there was a couple other holes, and I was thinking, I don't know if the ladder will reach then, what were they doing in here? I kind of got up, and I started looking in, and the weird thing is, I couldn't tell you any relation which way they were going at that point. I think we were completely directionally lost. I couldn't tell you if it was north, south, east, west. I remember just getting up in there. It was off to my right, looking at the pit, and I was climbing back up in there. And I remember climbing in there, and there was some old picks and some stuff, and there were these big bars, looked like pointed pry bars. And I was looking at that stuff, and most of it wasn't really rusted, but it wasn't new, but there wasn't much moisture in there, so I don't think they would have rusted. And there was some other kind of pieces of lengths of rope, but there was nothing else in there. So I thought, okay, and it kind of went back, and then it kind of did a little dip, and then it did a little bit of a right turn, and I kind of got to that point, and I'm looking around, and I could see where it kind of had collapsed. So I kind of looked at that and was trying to look at the collapse from about 5-6 feet away, and I never saw any mineralization. I mean, I might not have known jack back then, but I really didn't see anything I was seeing, so I kind of scooted my way back up, and it was big enough that you could crawl, but it wasn't very big. Couldn't stand up, couldn't really sit up in it, but I was smaller then. Yeah, you gotta remember when I'm doing this, I probably weighed $140. So I'm just kind of maneuver around, came back out, got on the ladder. Darryl's about halfway up, complaining and moaning and groaning, but there's nothing I could do to help him. I go over and move the ladder, and there's these couple other holes, and one seemed way too high, so I didn't know how they got to that or what that was. It did not look natural, but this other one was there, and I got up to it, and it was, you had to stand on the very tip top of this wooden ladder, and you could kind of see it, and you had to jump up and get up in. So I got up in that, it was kind of similar to the other hole, and I started working my way back and crawling, and it kind of went one way, and then it kind of went another way, and went another way, and then it kind of started back, and then it seemed like it was going back to my left, and just kept making increments. And I think because your adrenaline and stuff is going, you're not really thinking about the danger. It was a hard rock mine, a lode mine, so I wasn't really caring about anything. I wasn't seeing anything, and then I heard voices. And I was thinking, oh my God, is somebody in here? And I was trying to rationalize that they should have heard us, but why didn't we hear them? And then I'm starting to wonder if I'm hearing Daryl talking down below, and there's some other way it's venting up through coming up, or is it just kind of one of those, it's kind of an audio illusion that I'm hearing him from behind, but it sounds like he's up ahead. And I worked my way, and then I got to a certain point, and it just dead-ended. And it was very weird. It was kind of like very straight flat, like it was almost squared. And I was looking at it, and there was recently a movie I saw that was or a TV show, and I can't remember, I think it was the TV show The Dark, and these guys would crawl down this little tunnel. It was kind of squared. Now this tunnel was a little more rounded, and then they come to the spot where they open this little door, and it's like a little square area, and it was like that. It was just kind of like they squared it away, and I was looking and trying to figure out what were they following, what were they doing, why did this end up this way, looking down. So I worked my way back out. By the time I got out, Daryl's there. Told him the first one there was some tools and stuff. He had to go up. He peeked in that, came out. I told him the second one of what I saw, there wasn't really anything in it. And at the time I just was like, it kind of dead ends, really weird, dude. It's like a real flat piece of rock they got to or something. And I told him I banged on it and stuff. There's nothing, you know. I grabbed one of these little metal rebar poles they had, so for poking around, because even though there shouldn't have been a snake in any of these holes, I kept thinking somehow a snake had climbed up, went on, and so I was poking in spots ahead of myself looking. So we got to the last one, and we were trying to figure out how to do that, and the thing we came up with is set the ladder up. Daryl climbed up, and then I would climb Daryl and then stand on his shoulders and get in this hole, because, you know, we're young. So I did that one, and I got into that hole, and that hole was kind of weird because it kind of started dipping and tipping and going down. And I got probably 10, 15 feet in, and then there was an opening. And I looked down in the opening, and it was like they popped out a hole, but it went into a spot. It didn't look like it had been cleaned out. It looked like something had broke through into another spot, and I was thinking, is this a cave? That was really dicey to me, because even though I think we all think now is like there's no way a snake could have made it all the way into that and dropped into that, but I don't know where it came from, so I was very, very wary of possibly dropping into that snake. Now you have to imagine you're way back in all these tunnels, and I'm just, you know, there's a point that you're getting exhausted, and now's when you're starting to feel kind of like, oh my God, what am I thinking? We still got to work all our way back out of there. What if this collapses? Does anybody really know what it is? Nobody would ever know where to find us. And Daryl's asking, what do you see? What do you see? And I told him there's a hole in the floor. He's telling me to be careful. And I remember dropping my head in and looking in, and it was like an area, and it wasn't carved out, but it was like a natural opening area, and it had to be maybe 8 feet wide, 10 or 12 feet long, and about 4 feet tall. So you could sit up in it. So I was looking around, didn't see anything in there, looked up ahead, and it kept doing this kind of step, kind of decreasing thing. And I wasn't sure what to think of it. It wasn't like steps. It was like it would go 10 feet, and then you'd realize you were sloping, and then there would be a drop, and then you would drop, and then you would go down further. So I told him I was going to go. I yelled back, said I'm going to go a little ways further, and that just kept going. I couldn't tell you the direction I was going at that point. I thought in my head I should be coming out of the mountain at that point, but we must have been so turned around we were going deeper in the mountain. That tunnel was no different than the other ones, maybe 3 feet by 3 feet. You could literally kind of to some degree crawl in it, bang your head in it, or you could just kind of on your belly kind of crawl through it. But I was, you know, $140, I was young, I was crawling along and stuff. There was no debris or anything, so I went down a ways, went back, dropped down in that hole, and I was kind of like looking around. There was nothing in there. There was no bones, there was no tools, no nothing. I remember just kind of checking it all out, looking at it, sifting through. There had been a lot of the tailings, dirt and stuff that fallen from up top. So we're sitting there, and I'm like, whatever. So I worked my way back out to Daryl. Of course, again, stupid move number whatever is getting down out of there, which meant I had to stand kind of literally on his shoulders and then slither down his body to the ladder. So we got that done. We got back on the ground. We were looking around, realized there was nothing up there. Someone had been working there, probably hadn't been working there a very long time. We sat down. We were just about out of water and beer. So we're like, let's just get out of here. And we could hear voices down below us. We're hearing voices and we're looking at each other, and our flashlights are starting to dim because they batteries back then didn't last worth crap. So we're looking at each other and kind of doing that spooky thing where you hold the flashlight under your face because you're talking to the other guy, and we're kind of like, what do we do? So Daryl thought we should pull up the rope, and I'm thinking, I don't know, he's because you don't want anybody to discover you're there. What if these guys? So he went out, he pulled that rope up, and we just sat there, and we couldn't really look down or anything. We didn't see any lights down there, and we kept hearing, we thought we heard names. I couldn't tell you what the names were. And we kept hearing talking and stuff, and we heard it, and then we didn't really hear much other than it sounded like casual conversation. And it was just like the longest time in the world. Now we smoke cigarettes, so we were smoking cigarettes. I think he had one beer left in his pack, so we split that and just sat there just listening. And then eventually you're looking at each other. There's no more voices. Okay, they must have left. And then we heard a couple things, so I figured they must be leaving. Drop the rope because we're so exhausted. We just want to get out of there. Figure if they're nowhere around close enough, we can get out, skirt around the corner, and leave a different route. So we got down that rope fast. Rope burns and everything. We hit the ground and we got out, and we don't see anybody. We look over the edge because we got out and we're starting to look around, and there's no one for miles. So we look up above us, we look around us, we're listening for voices, nothing. So we just decide, you know what, we got probably a couple miles, 3 miles to get back out, and we just need to start hoofing it because we don't really have, I think there was almost no water left. We need to get hoofing it. So we hit the ground, grab our stuff. We left that board there with the rope. There's no way to get it. And we took off. And we literally, because of that adrenaline and being young and being tired and being stupid, we just kind of did that shuffle where we're not walking, we're kind of almost jogging, and we're just kind of tripping, stumbling along, just heading back. And we'd stop once in a while and listen and stuff and take a few breaths, and then we kept going. We got back to the vehicle. And when we got back to the vehicle, the Tuttle National Forest Ranger was there, and he was checking on vehicles, and he kind of watched us walking up, and I remember him asking, hey boys, where you been? And we were like, we found a old spot back in there, and we were just kind of moseying around, not really much of anything and all that. And he said, what have you guys been doing? And we're like, what do you mean? I guess, when we saw ourselves later, once we got home, we were literally covered in dust and dirt. Our faces are like dusty and black and just everything all over us. My t-shirt was ripped everywhere, and I'd cut my back up, so there's blood going through my shirt. We got blood and cuts on our arms and everything, and we're standing there like, yeah, what's up? No, nothing. We just went for a hike. And he kept looking us over and going, are you guys okay? And we're like, yeah, we're okay. Yeah. So he kind of checks and talks to us. He looked amused. We got back over. We went ready to load up. There wasn't really any water in the truck, but there was a cooler with beer. So we had Coors Light. So we took some Coors Light out, and one of the things we did is once we saw in the mirrors and we could see how dirty and filthy we were, we took the beers and I know today in DUI day, the way things are now, you wouldn't have, but we kind of poured the beer over our heads and stuff to try to relieve because we were so overheated and hot. And I remember we're just sticking like beer and doing that, and then we grabbed some stuff and wiped ourselves off. It hit my back, and I will tell you, I felt like screaming because that's when I realized I'd kind of shredded up my back, and I was told later because when we got back into town, we stopped somewhere to get something to eat, and someone said, you guys need to go home and clean up. You don't need to be here eating. Anyhow, we hit that spot. I've always kept that spot, never quite understanding what it is. I've never heard anyone talk quite about that spot. I've never been able to attach it to any single individual. I have no idea. Someone put a lot of time and effort in. I mean, we're talking Those tunnels at points were sometimes 80, 90 feet, a couple of them, some of them were 40, 50 feet. How they were getting up and in and digging some of that stuff, I have no idea. And to this day, there's nothing. I brought some of the tailings and stuff out. There's no mineralization, nothing. There was no silver, there was no gold. It was an extensive mining operation, probably by just 1 or 2, 3 individuals. And they put so much time and effort, but there's no reason. And somehow they hit a spot where they fell through, and they must have thought they were going to hit the mother lode. There was some treasure. Maybe there was. Maybe that's what the whole plan was. They were digging, and they finally fell into whatever legend, some myth, something that none of us will know about. They got it and got out. Left some tools behind, and that was it. We'll never know. Never know what to call a mine. I've never kind of given a name. I've always looked through stories and research trying to find out if there was someone in that specific area. Never found anything to kind of label it up or what to give it up. And I've never wanted to give much information out. Not so much the secrecy of the site. Well, it is a little bit of dangerous. But the other part was I always wanted to keep some of the information, the location, and a few things about it quiet so that someone would ever come up. They'd say something that would be, okay, I know what you're talking about. What was the history, or what did you know about this area? I went back one other time, probably in my 30s, and it looked like nobody had been there. Nothing had been there. I don't know what the voices were down below us. I thought I heard voices in that one tunnel, and I thought I heard them down below us, and we never saw a person. I don't know if you would call that supernatural, paranormal, if you call it just maybe us not knowing what we were hearing, if actually somebody was in those tunnels. I have no idea. So there's a story. That one has to go back. We were in our early 20s, so it had to be sometime in the mid-80s. We were back in there and beer-fueled treasure hunting. Myself and Daryl. And I don't know what happened to Daryl. I've lost track of him and many years ago. So there you go. Thank you for joining me for that story. Wish we would have come up with something better, but there wasn't a single artifact or anything. Catch us next week, next Monday. Be sure to hit comment or make a comment, hit subscribe, and like us. And we will catch you next week in Legend of the Superstition Mountains, Chasing Legends. Thanks for watching.